I want to start by just getting your guys' thoughts on a piece that we'll be publishing a little later today at cbssports.com. I'm just putting the finishing touches on it. And the premise of the column is an interaction that I had with a coach Thursday night at the airport. I had a layover in Atlanta and bump into a coach who I've known for a long time. And, you see somebody at the airport, this is the first question always. Hey, where are you going? Everybody wants to know where you're going. So I was like, hey, where are you headed? And he told me, and he said, where are you headed? And I said, Peach Jam. And at some point he said, oh, it'll be the most stress-free Peach Jam in history. And I said, really, what do you mean by that? And here's what he meant. I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, in years past, you'd go to Peach Jam and you've got, you got an idea of how many kids you need in your class, and you've identified them, and now you're doing all the, you sit in baseline, you're doing everything you need to do to put yourself in position. And there was always like real stress attached to it because you felt like then who do you get? Who's your backup plan? And the point the coach was making is now there is always a backup plan. In fact, the backup plan should maybe in many cases be, your initial plan. His point was me and my staff can be here. We got kids we like. And if we would take a commitment from some of them, but if we don't get them, it's fine because in April, somebody 2, 3, 4 years older and maybe 2 or 3 times better equipped to help me win next year is going to be there for me. And so there's less pressure to get things done this summer than there has ever been. I'll start with you, Fink. Do you subscribe to that? Do you see that?
To a certain extent. I think it's multi-layered in my experience, because although the NIL picture is a little more clear this year than maybe it was last year, I think the portal's kind of been running like this for the last couple of summers. And in my experience, I think it's the programs that put high school recruiting to the side and say, hey, we only have 3 to give. We're not even worried about high school guys. Well, they end up with 6 to give in the spring, and they can't get 6 out of the portal, and it usually ends up backfiring. So to me, the programs that have got this figured out are the ones that get the same high school guys they normally would, recognize that, yes, there's going to be more supply, but there's also going to be more attrition at the end of the year, so they're going to have to get that many more guys. And if you don't still prioritize the high school ranks to a certain extent, you're just going to have bit off more than you can chew in the transfer portal.
Norlander, add to that.
So I think what GP's getting at here tends to be true. This is based off of talking to a few other coaches there. If you're not chasing a top 10 player, and if you're not a mid-major coach, but you're a power conference coach that feels comfortable in working the portal and roster building. Now, there's not to say that when the coach that was talking to GP about this, that there isn't like pressure to still do the job. There is. It's just the things that are attached to the July live period seem to have been muted to a certain extent because a lot of this stems from not just going in the portal and adding that and value that there's finding in players that are 21, 22. By the way, this is the last year of COVID eligibility for the bonus year this upcoming season. So there's been a lot of that as well. And so with that and freshmen having less impact than ever, I'll have a column probably go up Tuesday kind of related to that as well with the COVID year ending. Just in terms of just in terms of transformative impact, I think that's where this stems from. And to this point, how about this? And we got to talk about a lot of these guys, but you guys were not there yesterday. I did Peach Jam on Sunday, and I was truly taken aback at what I saw. The only other instance I can remember of this at any recruiting event over the past, 12, 13 years of going to this stuff was when it applied to Amani Bates and actually wrote on it. But I saw AJ Devansa and Tyron Stokes, the number 1 player in 25 and 26. They play for the Oakland Soldiers, and they were playing against the New York Renaissance. So you have 2 number 1 prospects. And I watched their game, and it's Sunday. Coaches can still be there. A lot of media wasn't there because a lot of them are like things going back, and that's a whole other deal. They kind of botched the schedule with Nike, but I'm told that's going to change back to the way we normally are expecting it for next year, which is good, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. Anyway, the point is this game was so lightly attended, I couldn't believe it. We're talking about 2 players tracking to potentially be the number 1 pick in the 26 and 27 drafts. And for Debansa in particular, who's going to release his father told me his final 5 to 7 schools will be publicly released by the end of the month. We'll see if that happens, whatever. There are schools that are recruiting him were there but the only head coach that would be in that mix that was there for most of the game, I think, was Nate Oates, and he wasn't even there the whole game. Like, he might have been bouncing back. There wasn't one assistant here, but I couldn't remember a time where you'd have the number one recruit, let alone a player of DeBance's level. And I understand, like, he's going to play again, like, later this week, and rest assured, when he's playing Friday and the coaches can be there, like, they're going to be 3-4 deep. But the only time was Amani Bates, when everyone thought Amani Bates was never going to college. We kept hearing he'll never play, and his father kept insisting he's going to college. I'm telling you, that was the case. But, like, it was weird when he was, I think, a rising junior. His games weren't, like, heavily attended, and it was like, why is no one recruiting the number one player in the class? So to GP's point, I just couldn't believe that it was a Sunday game at noon, and you really would, and it was in the main gym, and you would have thought this was like, an 8 a.m. game in gym 3 off to the side, and I just hadn't seen that in a while. So I knew you were going to write, GP. When I was looking around, I was like, I can't believe this, man. Like, Calipari was also, I'll say this because I don't want to not mention him. Calipari was the only head coach of a team that could conceivably recruiting him that was there from the tip until the game finished.
Did you already get a text message that you didn't?
I did not, but I just remembered it in real time here. Yes.
Oh, and you'll know this better than us. I don't even get involved in that, like the tweets about who's in the gym.
Yeah.
I don't play, But if you leave somebody out, you'll get that text message.
Oh yeah, and you can see it on Twitter. Like, if you've been following this stuff, like, you can, and it even happens in the NBA. Like, without naming it, like, you can see tweet goes out and it's like, needs to be amended because they just got a text message, whether it's from the college coach or the agent or whoever. It's like, addendum to the tweet, meaning just got a text.
Yeah, right. So Norlander, you just touched on something that I don't know if I'm going to focus much of the column on it, but it is something I heard from various coaches. And one of them is, you guys know it, we've all been doing this for a long time at this point. You get to the gym early, make sure the kids see you during warm-up lines, stand under the basket, whatever you're doing.
Yeah. And
coaches are telling me now, it still matters, as long as everything is still equal money-wise or in the ballpark money-wise. But I'm not speaking about AJ specifically, but I promise you, talk to the coaches who are recruiting him, and here's what they would tell you. Yeah, I would have loved to have been there, but I had other things I needed to do. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down to money anyway. It's not going to come down to how many games I saw him play. It's coming down to money, and that will be the determining factor.
Yeah. No doubt about it. That's what I was going to say. Like, with some of these big name guys, I don't think it has as much to do with the transfer portal, and it has to do with the reality of what the basis of the decision is going to be made by. And sometimes that's not just college either. Some of these kids are making high school decisions based on that. And now that's just starting to come out a little bit, but NIL is the driving force here, and it's all about buying power. And I hate to be so, just candidly capitalistic, I will say about that, but that's just the reality of it. You can sit courtside all you want. If you don't have the buying power and the kid's got to take half as much money to come to you as he would somewhere else. And this isn't specific to those players you mentioned. I think that's the case just about everywhere now. It's the rare kid, and there were some in last year's class who took less money to go other places. But buying power is the biggest domino in the recruiting process.
Yeah, I talked to Chris Jans about it at Mississippi State, and he said, like, facilities and relationships and all of that stuff still matters, but only if the money is comparable. If somebody else has got 400 and you got 150 or 2, then none of the other stuff matters. You're not in that game. But if you can get in the game with the money, then it might really come down to the relationship. Like, all money's equal. Where you want to go? I'll go with the guy I like more. I'll go with the place that whatever. But his thing was, if you don't have the money, you're wasting your time. And I asked him, I said, when you sit down with a mom, dad, family now, how quickly does the money come up? And he laughed and he said, if you're sitting down with them, it's already come up. You're not sitting down with them if it hasn't already come up.
Well, this is I'll tell you guys this, like, when rankings came out, when we did rankings last month, usually historically rankings come out and your phone starts buzzing right away. And it's like the AAU coach, the college coach, even though they'll all tell you they don't care. They care. Trust me. Right. My text messages say,
I see DeMarcus Cousins try to fight a recruiting guy in a, that's an exaggeration. I shouldn't say that.
It wasn't me, but
it was at Peach Jam at the Marriott. Everybody stayed, not try to fight. That's an overstatement, but like was visibly frustrated and wanted to talk about it in the lobby of the Marriott.
That's funny. You know who I won't name them, but you know who my first 4 messages were this year? Probably the 4 biggest agencies in basketball, and they were all like, it was professional. They were all great, but like that's just where it's at now.
Right. And one last thing on this, and then we'll move on. I want to get both your thoughts on this, because I also was talking to the grassroots coaches, and I had one grassroots coach. He said, like, listen, Boozer, like the top of the top, there's always going to be high demand for that. He said, but if you're not one of those guys now, this was the quote: 5 stars are basically treated like 3 stars now. And that might be a slight over, whatever. But his point was, let's just think of it like this. Coaches are telling all of us they do not want to offer as many high school players as they used to. Now, just take that all across the high major level. If in the summer, high major programs used to offer, let's just say 4 or 5, just to make the math easy, 4 or 5 high school players a year. If now they're only offering 2 or 3 or 1 or 2, then the number of people getting high major offers at the high school level is going down dramatically. Do you see that in your reporting, Fink? That say this one coach told me, if you're ranked 150 to 300, you cannot get offers anymore that you used to get pretty regularly.
I've always thought offers were not tangible. Right. Like they're often, like this week was a terrific example. There was reports of a kid getting an offer from a blue blood type program that hits social media, and quickly you get a text and say, we didn't offer. Now they can't put that out there.
Right.
So offers, like I haven't tweeted a scholarship offer in the last 5 years. And the reason I don't do it is because it's very difficult to confirm, and it's impossible to confirm on the record. And oftentimes it is, it's not real, or it's it's certainly not real for an undefined period of time. And it's not like a baseball card you can collect, which is the way they are perceived on social media. What I will say, though, is if we think about where kids end up, I don't think that number has really changed, at least at the high major level. What I do think has changed is the timing of it. So what we've seen in the last couple of years is a rush of high school recruiting. And it starts in June, where we already saw about 4 nationally ranked kids commit in the 2 weeks before the recruiting period. And it'll go for like basically through September. Now, once practice starts and some of these official visits, they start to slow down. And then the early signing period comes in November. Once that's over, like coaches, they're done with high school recruiting now for the most part. So I still think there's an emphasis on recruiting high school kids from June to November for the programs that are smart and recognize you still have to make that a part of your roster construction approach. I don't know how it impacts offers, because I just don't really consider offers to be very real in many cases. But in terms of where kids up and when and where they are committing, I don't think we've seen much differentiation in that in years past. Like I still think the same number of kids are committing to the same number of schools. The same number of top 100 kids are committing around the same times. The exception to that is, like I said, there's definitely a seasonal component to it now. Summer and fall is the big high school rush. After that, unless, to your previous point, GP, you are a big time kid,
right?
Recruiting's basically on hold once the season's in play and once the portal's open.
I will say this to tag it. There is a coach at a top 25 level program, made a good run in the tournament last year. I won't name the coach because I don't know, frankly, if the coach has publicly declared this or not. So I'll consider the comments off record, who has said, like, I'm not recruiting freshmen. And I did not see that coach out at all. Not to say that he won't go out, but I think that's evidenced by how he has recruited the past year or so. And then I talked to another coach in a multi-bid league, and which is, not like a high major. And I was talking to him, the typical, like, all right, tell me how much you love your team, yada, yada. He's like, no, I actually do love my team because I don't have a single freshman on the roster this upcoming season. Okay. I could not be happier right now that my team is this old. So eventually you're going to have to filter them in. These guys got to go to college. But for 2 kind of micro examples, you do see a little bit more of that. And it's also evidenced in the value and the production of freshmen. We'll see if that changes once the COVID year goes away. But there's definitely a tenor of like the July live period from a coaching perspective not feeling as urgent and all important as it once was. There are any number of factors on why that's the case.